Oh, you're on Augusta? I'm your neighbor, I'm on St. Anne's Lane,
Okay, 714.
which is where?
More different.
Huh?
More south side of the street.
Oh, so you like Bruce Gardner?
Well, yeah.
Okay.
So how many
I've been to
was it just?
And Thomas More.
She sent out a letter, actually, 120 to 150 kids, they sold out of everything. It went really well.
I was visiting a neighbor in the
I
hospital.
did 30 years.
It really exceeded
And David
expectations,
Hall was
I
there
would say.
slinging hot dogs.
Yay. Very good.
Yeah, it exceeded our expectations.
Yay. We went door to door, Pat, and all worked for, including Glenelg Park.
Well, it worked.
Door to door and did flyers. I
Thank
don't know who
you.
was there from there,
Thank
but
you.
that's the way to communicate with people.
And people were grateful
What are we doing?
of it. They were excellent.
34.
We should start this meeting.
Oh, yeah?
How was it?
It's,
I know.
Yeah, well, I forgot to ask Chris. Oh, wait, we gotta find out about the birthday party.
Oh, you
Well, let's find out about the,
Yeah, okay, I'll have it later.
let's call this meeting to order.
Get it rocking.
Our phones are for sure.
All right, this is a public hearing. Can we have a roll call, please?
Councilwoman Cleveland, she is absent. Councilman Sexenheimer,
Here.
Councilwoman Smith, absent. Councilman Evans,
Here.
Councilman Hong,
Here.
Councilman Nelson, absent. Councilwoman Grosso,
Here,
Councilwoman Campbell. Here. She is on Zoom.
Yes.
You have to-
All righty, thank you. We have a quorum. All right, the purpose of this,
Excuse me, Mayor.
I'm sorry.
Councilwoman Campbell, can you please have your camera on for purposes of a quorum?
we don't even have a quorum.
We do have a lot of
As long
turns
as Councilwoman Campbell has her camera on.
1, 2, 3, 4. 4?
She'll be here.
5 with Councilwoman Campbell.
There we go. Now you're here.
Oh,
Thank
Tony,
you.
you're right, yeah.
All right, the purpose of this hearing is to get input from the public regarding the proposed Phase 2 of First Responders Park.
Hey.
Hello, Rick. I want to give a brief history of what's transpired so far and where we're at with this. Back in the summer of 2019, the city of Normandy and the city of Pasadena Hills entered into an agreement to apply to the Municipal Parks Grant Commission for a park at the site of the old firehouse. That application was subsequently approved, and the project went forward for the first phase of the project was the purchase of the firehouse and the demolition of the firehouse and some preliminary plumbing and electrical improvements. That has been done to the tune of $368,000 we're into this park. Following that completion of that phase, the following administration chose not to move forward with this project. There were some issues, some expense issues with it. It's been revived. Our Parks Board is recommending that we go ahead and move forward with the project. One of the major issues that I had was the maintenance of water features. And Pasadena Hills has agreed to assume the expense of maintaining any water features. And my understanding at this point, they're still tweaking the plans, but the water features are going to be limited to some small ponds and vegetation and
Splash pads.
well, splash pads, my understanding, may be out of the plan.
Okay.
And I'll let you, you'll have an opportunity to
Okay,
talk.
sure, I can tell you what I know.
Yep, for that last meeting. So, I would like to hear from the few people that took their time out of their day to come here and speak to this issue. The plan is to apply for another planning grant to get a cost estimate to complete this project. You've seen here a board that, the plans that Weiss put together, what the park will look like. It's going to be green space and benches a very quiet, peaceful place for people to meet. And Pat, you attended the last
I did.
meeting with our Parks
Yeah, and a
Board.
little pavilion, yeah.
Yes, our Parks Board and their Parks Board. If you can add anything to what I've had to say, please go ahead.
Okay, so I'm Pat Dolly, and I'm on the Parks Board, and I've met with the past, Elizabeth Hong, and myself, and Sherry Kearney, and then a couple people from Pasadena we met a few weeks ago. And since Mark had expressed, you know, we got a fountain to deal with, and we don't want any more water responsibilities. And so they agreed to take over any maintenance of any kind of water, you know, pumps and whatnot. So they keep talking about their residents want a splash pad, that's all they were saying. Well, then at this last meeting, one of the Pasadena council persons brought up, well, if you're gonna have a splash pad and you're gonna have little children playing in it, little children are gonna drink the water, that's a different situation than a fountain. And we're like, oh yeah. So, I mean, I know Coke Park has a splash pad, and I mean, there's different, so there must be a way to solve that problem, but it kind of took us aback, and someone at that meeting, and I can't remember who it was assigned to like contact Florissant. How does the splash pad work? How is it safe for the children if they drink the water? So that's kind of where we're at. We're waiting to get more information.
Well, and to add that, my understanding is the inspections required, the safety required, it's just a much higher level.
It's different level. It's a different level than a
liability is
fountain.
higher level, and the
Right.
insurance is a higher level.
I didn't think about that, but it's important to them. And so we're kind of leaving the ball in their court to do the work and the due diligence and get the numbers, and because we were always fine without a water feature, right?
Yes.
So that's where we stand. Just kind of waiting to get more information on a splash pad.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Anybody else? Terry, please. State your name and address, please.
Terry Gannon, 7620 Augusta. Well, this is kind of interesting. You know, I never did like the splash pad for exactly what you were talking about.
Right.
Not just kids, but dogs. You know, drinking the water.
Well, and
running
diapers,
around.
I mean, it kind of.
Yeah, I just think it's kind of disgusting.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Well, yeah, I mean,
but,
And it's seasonal. I mean, somebody's got
Yeah.
to shut it down, somebody's got to open it up,
I mean, we have enough problems with the fountain.
well, that's why they had to agree to take on all the maintenance.
Well, and even ponds, you know, because I got a couple fish ponds in my yard that my brother-in-law takes care of, because even that's a pain in the butt. You know, leaves in there and all that kind of stuff.
Sure.
So I like the trees, I like a little place to sit, I like a little pavilion. Because, you know, back in the day when we used to have the fake Normandys, I don't know, anybody here remember that? Besides me? You know, when we were able to close off Pasadena Boulevard back there, and, you know, we had booths and stuff all lined up and down the street, you know, because Normandy, that part of Pasadena belongs to Normandy.
90%.
Yeah, and Pasadena, even though they hated it, couldn't really say anything to us about what we did in Normandy, even though it was backed up to them.
Right.
So I kind of like that little area there. You know, if the pavilion would be a little more open, so that, you know, if you wanted to have a band there or something, you know, and people could bring chairs and you could close off Pasadena Boulevard, because it's a lot easier to close that off if you're going to do something on a weekend than closing off Natural Bridge like we've done in the past, you know, because that's just terrible. But the thing that we need the most is parking.
Yeah.
So I think whatever we do there, you don't want to put too many structures there, because if things actually should happen in Normandy and we get some businesses coming here, I think it'd be a great place for a parking lot. So,
What?
well, you know, there's no place to park. There is no place to park on Natural Bridge.
Street.
Well, there's not.
Behind what used to be Aldi's or whatever it's called now.
Yeah, well, you can't really park there. because of the hill and stuff like that. So, and those businesses up on Natural Bridge, you know, if you go up there in the evening, they're like parking all over the place. You know, we've got a church there. You know, O'Reilly's has been nice enough to share their parking lot with some of the businesses, but that's their parking lot. I'm not saying do it now, and if it never happens and we never need it, I'm fine with that too. But so I like a more simpler plan. I like the trees. I like the pavilion. I don't know that we need water features. All I can see is kids and dogs and in the water.
And it looks likely, we'll see how that goes.
Well, you can always fill it back in if it's not very deep. So, you know, it's an easy remedy. Well, that's just my opinion. I think we should do something. I really like the pavilion. I like the green space. I like the flowers. I like the potential. So, okay.
There is a feature there I failed to mention. It's
What?
gonna be consistent with the theme. There's gonna be some monument to the firefighter, all the first responders.
This,
Oh, yeah.
this is the first response part of it. It's gonna have
Hey,
some,
whatever
like,
happened to those
fire,
rabbits?
police, EMS, I don't remember what, but yeah,
Oh,
that's
that
your,
would be nice.
Thank you.
because originally I wanted a fire truck that the kids could play on, but
Oh, that would be,
They didn't
yeah,
like that
Jefferson
idea.
has a train. That would be nice.
Anybody else?
Wait, what happened to the rabbits?
I have no idea.
Are they still up at Public Works?
I've never seen the rabbits.
What?
Should be a public works.
What are you talking about?
What, the rabbits aren't on the agenda tonight.
I mean, but they were given to us,
Yeah, yeah.
It's a public works.
and we were supposed to put them somewhere. They're works of art. Oh, maybe they came down, we didn't do anything, I don't know. Okay.
Anybody else have any opinion, input, questions about this proposal? If the council agrees, we'll probably have a resolution at the next meeting to move forward with a planning grant for this park. We could be looking at a $300,000 to $400,000 grant application. We have to be careful about the funds required because we have to put that money up front, and then after the project's done, we're reimbursed. But the commission has worked with us in allowing us to do that in phases. They realize small communities have trouble coming up with those kinds of dollars.
don't we have to come up with a percentage?
I think it's 8%.
Yeah, it's not
8%, yeah.
something, yeah.
And that's not anything to sneeze at, when we're
Right.
talking about an additional $400,000. So this is, at its completion, this is gonna be an $800,000 project to purchase, demolish, and then make these improvements. It's a big project.
What percent do we have to? I didn't quite.
I believe it's 8%.
8.
So is that all our grant? Does
No,
Pasadena?
it's very convoluted. The process they use to determine how much is charged against us, and it's, once you enter into an agreement with another municipality, the rules change. And they really, you get a lot of points just for doing that.
Oh, for
Just
being their friend,
Well, no, for
Collaboration.
for collaborating?
cooperating with some other school district, another municipality, that type of thing. So you do get points for that, so, and it is a convoluted equation, how they figure what dollars are ours and what dollars are charged against them, and so forth. But, anybody on the council have any questions or comments?
Is that gonna be a certain amount of dollar expense for Normandy per year to maintain?
Well, the maintenance, we agreed to do the, cut the grass and cut and trim. They're gonna maintain water features. Now, if we get into extensive landscaping, that's a negotiation we're gonna have with the city of Pasadena Hills.
Well, they have a garden club and all that, so I
Right,
would
and they
think-
mentioned that
I would
they may
anticipate-
just assume that also because
Yeah.
they've got an active
It's
garden club.
Grass cutting.
Well, the mowing and trimming will do.
And they're more.
That's routine mowing and trimming. But if they've got extensive landscaping with flowers everywhere and everything,
Right.
that's expensive maintenance if you don't have volunteers to manage it. Anybody else?
Yeah, I like to add, in the past, they did speak about, some of the residents spoke about it possibly being part of a farmer's market on a Saturday, considering they got the gardens there with the vegetables that they grow, and it could possibly be something like that once a month, farmer's.
Yeah, if room
market.
provides for it, that's a
Yeah.
possibility, yeah.
That was in the past, I heard some residents speak about that area, because like you said, we only own part of that land.
Aren't we 9%?
Majority, yeah.
Right.
That would be a fun idea though in the summer.
The only thing that concerns me is the parking.
Yeah, that's a big issue.
That's the biggest issue with our parking.
But you know, Tony, the auto place never is full, never. I think it was full one time when they had a car show.
Yeah, but see, here's the thing.
They do have car
You know, when
shows, you're
people
right.
parking, they don't wanna walk too far,
Exactly,
so they're gonna park as close as possible.
right.
And if they're not customers of the auto parts store, then they can and will be towed, which is the right of the property owner and the leasee, O'Reilly's.
Yeah, before the pandemic, they would have monthly car shows, remember? They haven't had them in a while. They were pretty full. But they were only, it was like a 5-hour period, it wasn't like,
And they were only pretty much right there at Natural Bridge area.
yeah, on the left, yeah, of their building.
Yeah.
So how many parking spaces would you, think is on that little strip, that street?
On Pasadena Boulevard there, I couldn't begin to guess, I don't know.
Not many, and they'd have to park parallel anyway,
Yeah.
unless they pulled in, but you
Well,
know,
on
they
an
don't have the
angle?
space.
There's,
So I think as an event location, it will be limited. Parking is gonna be a limiting factor for an event location.
All right.
Anybody else have any input on this? I'm gonna ask for it.
if parking's gonna be an issue, what,
Well, a lot of what that's gonna be used for is a walk-to park.
Yes.
It's gonna be a walk-to park. Walk-to, quiet, green space, hangout. Without any further comment, I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
Oh, it's over?
The hearing.
well, this is.
Hearing.
Right, the public hearing portion, if I could have a motion to close the public hearing portion, we'll go into our work session.
I'll make a motion.
I'll say.
There's a couple residents, I don't know if they wanted to be at the workshop, or I see a woman that just came in. and
Oh,
then
she was, everybody, you had an opportunity, did you need to say anything?
Can I?
Okay.
Can I say something before the works? This is, Mr. Bates, did you want to say something, or can I say something? I want to come in, Mr. Bates. If it's okay, the board. I just want to let you know, Mr. Bates, along with another resident, they purchased a sign for Augusta.
Oh, I saw you working on
Yes,
that.
and, yes, and he,
That's great.
he put that up himself, he and one of the other residents. And of course, we've been trying to get it up there. We have problems with getting our signs up, so I take my hat off to Mr. Bates for putting a sign up on his street.
Oh, was it Mr. Moore that was assisting?
Oh, Thomas,
Oh, yes.
what's the sign say, or what?
Augusta.
A street sign.
We've got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Sure. All right. The public hearing portion is closed, and we'll go into our work session now.
It was say, oh, hi, are you okay? Feel better? Did exceed our expectations.
We're not, the meeting's not adjourned, folks. Just the public hearing. But you're welcome to hang out for the work session.
Sounds like work.
Okay, I'll take it.
See ya.
Is, do we need Captain Sanders here now, Sam? Oh, there you are. Okay. Well, would you like to come to the podium and explain to the council your proposal? Sure.
I didn't know that they were gonna take that long to do it.
Actually, Captain, if you wanted to face this, that might be better.
This way?
We'll see you soon.
There you go. Now you can stand at the podium and you'll still be on.
Is there,
Hello?
Yeah.
Is there a handout for this?
What is this?
Yes, ma'am. It's actually just some bullet points from the police perspective. I can make one available to you via Sam if you like. I'm sorry.
Can he share his screen so I can see it?
He only has the paper copy.
Oh.
These are just some paper bullet points.
Oh.
But I'm going to address them all, hopefully, right now with
Get
everyone.
you a copy for home, Yolanda.
And I have a copy here for you.
Yeah. I could give it to you.
All right, proceed.
Good evening. Thank you guys for allowing me an opportunity to stand before you this evening to just discuss some of the concerns that I heard were raised regarding the flock camera system at the last council meeting. I wasn't present for that one. Bell Ridge has their meetings on the same night as you guys. So it's hard to be in two places at one time. But I am here now. I have a little bit more information than Chief Hall had regarding the flock camera system, what our intended use for the flock camera system would be. And I hope to address any concerns or be able to I'm a real person and I'm here with answers to questions or concerns you guys might have. So the very first page you'll see, it says why flock. It's kind of frequently asked questions, and I went through and just kind of put the answers in there. So for starters, cameras are the most unbiased resource used for the purpose of information gathering. LPR cameras are not able to detect occupants in the vehicle. The cameras and their processors are incapable of displaying or sorting through an image which yields any distinguishing features or identification of people. It's the same reason why the red light cameras that they used to have, those were stricken and taken away because it was really hard to distinguish who the driver was. And if you remember, people were getting tickets and they would go, I wasn't driving that car. The state upheld that was unconstitutional. The red light cameras, they went away. Those cameras that you see at the top of all the intersections and the lights and stuff like that, they don't capture images. So cameras do not see race, sex, gender, age, religion, or any political affiliation. Unlike DOR, Flock does not have an add or deletion feature and is a view-only software. So we can't, as law enforcement, put anything into Flock, and we can't take anything out of Flock. We can only log into Flock and use it as a search database for searching criteria. Let's see, MoDOT already has nearly 300 cameras installed along the interstates, highways, and state routes in the St. Louis area. Cameras can provide real-time information regarding traffic conditions, stationary and moving road hazards, dangerous moving vehicles, etc. Cameras are used virtually everywhere, and you'll see the list of places where we know cameras are used. Some of the best cameras I've ever seen are on bi-state buses. They have panoramic views of the inside and exterior of the bus, so you can see everything that's happening on and off the bus. It's actually pretty cool. Helped us to solve a homicide in Cool Valley. People are putting them on their own cell phones, and when we go on calls, guess what everybody's doing? Cameras, they're everywhere. So they're just everywhere. License plates and information they yield are exclusively designed for law enforcement agencies. I don't know if you guys have ever really given this much thought, but what's the purpose of a license plate on your car?
Identification
For who?
For the
for the police.
That's it. So your license plate is actually designed by the 50 states, specifically for the purpose of law enforcement being able to identify who the person is that owns that vehicle, and for safety purposes. When your car is stolen, how would we track it? Right? If your license plates are stolen, how do you report them without a number, and who do you report them to? License plates must be returned to the Department of Revenue upon demand, as they are not privately owned. So none of us owns our license plates, and that's why when they're stolen, they actually charge you with the responsibility when you sign that form at the DOR that says if your license plates are stolen, you're going to do what? You're going to make a police report. We're going to enter that plate as stolen, and then we're going to recommend that you take that report to the DMV. They'll give you replacement plates, because it's really unsafe for you to be driving around with one plate that's yours, and then somebody else could be using that plate for the commission of crimes or getting parking tickets. Next thing you know, you got a boot in Clayton. It's not a good situation. License plate information is only accessible to law enforcement via the protected DOR database. We already have access to the DOR database. We're using it every single day, every single traffic stop that we conduct, every ticket that is written, every driver that we stop. Their driver's license information is entered into DOR through our mobile ticketing software. Mobile ticketing generates the person's identifying information that's on file with DOR, and it automatically populates into the ticket that we write
for time saving. Imagine if we had to go in like old school pen to paper carbon copy, that was the worst. So we love mobile ticketing, thank you. Yes, sir.
Real quick, just to clarify, DOR is Department of Revenue.
Department of Revenue, yes, sir.
Thank you.
So we're glad that we're not what they used to call scratching out tickets anymore.
Right.
You never wrote anybody 5 tickets back in the day because your wrist hurt. License plate information is already being accessed by Normandy police officers daily through DOR. The FLOC database usage is subject to external compliance audits. So these audits are like the DOR audits and Regis audits and CGIS audits and all the other law enforcement audits that we have to undergo for external agencies that allow us access to their system. FLOC has actually already sent us audits that we participated in because we use FLOC through other systems and other agencies we provide service for.
Can you explain that then?
Yes.
Because that's not something I was aware of previously. So,
Sure.
Regis already uses FLOC's system externally?
So we are already using, we use DOR, we use Regis, we
Right.
use a lot of law enforcement systems.
Sure.
We also use FLOC already. The city of Pasadena Hills installed FLOC in 2020. And when we had patrol service for them, we made use of the FLOC database on a regular basis for all the crime that was occurring not only in Pasadena Park, but Pasadena Hills, but the park, and for anything that occurred in Normandy along that corridor in hopes that we could catch the person that did that thing in Normandy. Maybe they went past the FLOC in Pasadena Hills. So we had access to it up until probably a couple weeks ago, but now that we're doing law enforcement park, maybe you guys can tell Mayor McCarthy to give us the password back so we can get back on. Because we like FLOC, it's great. So yes, the external audit process is, say for example, I go in there and I type black BMW because there was an automobile accident in the 7700 block of Natural Bridge and you just got hit by someone and the only thing you could identify was a black Mercedes-Benz and it went east on Natural Bridge. We would check the FLOC camera, which we hope to put at the choke points, and I'll address that later, but we would check the FLOC camera at the eastern end and the western end of Natural Bridge to determine what direction it went, and the LPR would give us the license plate. So then we would have the information of the person that hit you, or at least a very good lead on where to start, because preliminarily, we will have no investigation except for a black Mercedes-Benz. So the external audit process is when we search black Mercedes-Benz, FLOC will actually send us an external audit periodically that says, you guys looked for a black Mercedes-Benz, you pulled these records, you looked at these things, what's the police report associated with this? There has to be some type of criminal justice reason or law enforcement reason for us to be using the FLOC. You can't just go on FLOC unless you're in training mode. Training mode allows us the ability for officers to use it as a training tool, and they give you different training things, but you have to specify you're in training mode and you're using it for training purposes. We used it, yes sir?
Is that an administrative function or login then, like a separate login?
It's a separate login for training,
Okay.
and there are parameters for things that you can search as well.
Let me ask you a question. Where
Sure.
would these cameras be placed?
Perfect. That kind of jumps us down to number 4, where I say at the very last bullet point that the FLOC cameras, these cameras will be strategically placed at the choke points of the city on major thoroughfares. Our hope is that Bellry Bakers is actually going to place a FLOC camera at the entrance of their subdivision and another one at Hanley and Natural Bridge. We're hoping to get one at Lucas and Hunt and Natural Bridge, one at Bermuda and Woodstock, one at Flores Road and the train trestle right after Bellry Bakers, to hopefully cover the main choke points and the ways that you can get in and out of Normandy. If you're not going on Lucas and Hunt and you're not going down Flores Road or Bermuda, how did you get in or out of Normandy? And these are a lot of areas where we have high crime. We've had a lot of vehicles dumped at Woodstock and Bermuda. So somebody that lives up there is stealing cars all over St. Louis, and we've recovered 3 or 4 Kias parked next to one another at several different occasions in the same locations. And we keep recovering all these stolen cars, but we never have a person, no one saw anything. What would be great is if they drove past the FLOC camera, we'd get a notification, there's a stolen car there. We could head that way, prospectively maybe catch the person, or at least more quickly recover the vehicle before they could park it, go take a shower, and then drive off again. Mr. Evans, did you have a?
Yeah, do we
Sure.
have a report of all the cars that's being recovered and stolen in Normandy?
I can get that data for you.
Because here's the thing, I keep looking at the police report, and it's nothing to report. So it seems like there's nothing going on in Normandy, but you're telling me that there's cars being stolen and there's cars being retrieved, but when I look at the report, it says nothing to report, and that's what, 4 communities?
So, I'll say this, I hope that in the future going forward, I would like to bring you guys a more comprehensive report about what's going on in Normandy. I don't want to just show you the calls that we're answering in Normandy proper. I want to show you that, yes, we answered 800 calls here, but we answered 700 in Bell Ridge and 79 in Glen Echo Park, because the amount of calls that we actually answer in a month is well over 2,000 calls for service, and the amount of reports that we write is way more. The amount of tickets that we write is way more, and we're only reporting to each individual municipality, but what I believe is, we are still original Normandy, and you guys need to know the report of all of Normandy activity.
Okay, but you see where I'm getting.
I do.
You see where I'm going.
I do, and I want to tell you, there's some things that don't generate a report. So like if we take a sudden death, you're not going to see it in the report. If we write a supplement to any report, you're not going to see supplements in there. If we write, like if we recover 200 stolen cars, they're not our original report. So when we write a supplement, we're supplementing St. Louis City's report because the crime didn't occur here. We don't report it to you.
So what's the use of sending a daily and?
So you know the actual crimes that are occurring in our town,
And
those are also.
that originated here.
Yeah, but see, okay, you're bringing this system to us, right?
Yes, sir.
But, okay, when I review the report, I'm not seeing anything.
If
So
I
what's the
may,
use of having this system?
so the reports that you're referring to are originally meant for supervisor to supervisor communication. And then we just share that with the
So
elected
why send them
officials.
to me
Well,
if there's nothing there?
it's not comprehensive is what I'm getting at. It's,
The original foundations was from day shift to night shift. If there was something that needed the other people to pick up on, it's pass-on information. And then it got to the point where the council was like, well, we want the pass-on information too. It's never been a fully detailed report of the occurrences.
That's actually like the problem. Like, this is what I see as a problem. In order for me to be on board with this, I need to see that there is actual like data that says this is something that will fill in the gap. But I don't know what the gap is because we don't have the data. You know, from,
And what would be helpful is a,
from
instead of a daily report,
about,
the daily, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead. The daily reports are every day. If we could have a weekly report
can't hear
that's,
you. Wait,
oh,
I would, what?
I should tell you on this. If we could have a weekly or bi-weekly report that's targeted to the council, not simply sharing the daily report, which is really not meant for our consumption anyway. It's nice to have.
But I think this is, what I was saying was that Sergeant Sanders, I think can actually generate a report that has all of the features that we need if we gave her the information about what we need. But in the past, things that we have asked for have not been like, you know, there hasn't been anything that has been initiated. For instance, like the traffic report, like, you know, Tony was saying, like, how many cars have been stolen? That's information that we just don't have. And it would be great for her to like take the helm on that and actually get those things together. I would like to see, this is where Normandy is lacking. This is the data that says Normandy is lacking in this area. And these are the things that would help us like get to the point where we're better at it. But if we're not doing the quality policing, like the traffic commission that we talked about, the traffic reports and all of those things, I just don't see how throwing money, it almost seems like throwing money at the problem because we don't have sufficient evidence and data. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Seems
There
like
was another point
just
Mayor
the-
Mark made as far as service, generating service calls versus the daily report. Do you remember that, Mayor Mark?
It's calls for service. I mean, a report that's geared to inform the council as to what's going on will be more beneficial than just seeing daily reports. like
Up until
described.
2020, the council used to get an annual report that we
Yeah,
used
we
to
did.
prepare.
Yeah.
And it would detail the crimes for service, how many were juvenile involved, adult involved, how many complaints this police department received, citations we wrote, what grants we received, how much training our officers had been through. We have not compiled that report in 2 years. I'm not opposed to it. I think information sharing is good because I think without the full picture, you guys can't truly grasp what the need is. But I want to kind of jump back into the flock to just articulate that this is not just a traffic-related crime prevention tool. If we have a burglary that occurs on Ellington, and then we have another one on Paddington, and another one on Dartmoor, and everybody saw a white work van with the yellow ladder on top, but nobody got the license plate information, that vehicle is either going to go down Bermuda to 70 or it's going to go to Woodstock. If it passes the LPR, we'll get a license plate on it. We'll be able to get the person's information that the plate is registered to. We'll be able to interview that person. Once we interview them, if we believe they're a person that's good for the crime, their vehicle wasn't stolen, it's the one and the same with the vehicle that was used, we can then apply for a search warrant for that person's cellular device. When we get their cell phone records through the warrant and it proves that between this time and this time, they were on Ellington, Paddington, and Dartmoor, we just solved your burglary. The LPR software has been used historically to solve crimes. In Normandy, at the very back of your packet, there's a few examples that Detective Sergeant Beekman actually gave me. I think the most prolific one, because I think that one crime that's solved is worth the sweat equity or worth the system, and we're actually going to use drug seizure money that we have to actually purchase them, so it's not coming out of the city's operations budget, and it's not coming from anything, it's not an unbudgeted expense from this year, because we're going to try to use some of the drug money that we have to do this. We understand that the juice is worth the squeeze, and it's a force multiplier. The most prolific thing that we did with the flock was in the summer of this year, a juvenile was reported as a missing runaway person. The mother, believing that her daughter was going to be utilized for sex trafficking, had grave concerns about her daughter's well-being and safety. The LPR on the property of the apartment complex provided us with a license plate. The license plate was entered into Flock and provided a full picture of the vehicle. This led to the identification of the suspect and recovery of the juvenile in less than 48 hours before she was moved across state lines for the purpose of sex trafficking. We've used it to clear cases. When we had the homicide down here on Natural Bridge, we had a vehicle description. We had a white Infiniti that was on the parking lot that pulled up, and within seconds, we had it on camera, but we did not have the license plate information. The subject got out. We couldn't see him on camera fire the shot, but you could hear the shot being fired, and you could see the glass breaking, and you could see the individual that was shot. Immediately after that, white, I believe it was an Infiniti or Lexus, pulled off at a high rate of speed and was noted to be going east on Lucas and Hunt. It took us about 5 or 6 days to actually find that vehicle, and guess how we found it? Flock. And then once we found it, we were able to put it out as wanted. It later ran from Ladue, and Ladue got a notification via Flock. And they chased it, and it crashed, and the people had guns and drugs, and we got our suspect in the homicide from Flock. We could have done it a lot faster if we had our own Flock. And so that's the problem. We no longer have our own access to Flock, and we're still using it. We're just using it through other agencies. But it's difficult when we don't have it to identify crimes that are occurring here. I know that Bellerive Acres is willing to, they're ready to move forward because they want to know what's coming in and out of their community, and they're a relatively small community. Normandy is even larger. We police 5,000 constituents in the city of Normandy, an additional 1,600 in Cool Valley, about 2,500 to 3,000 in Bell Ridge, and we're a police department right now of 23 officers, including administrative staff. It's a force multiplier. And we don't chase cars that are stolen. Our policies that we have concerning what we do don't change because we have Flock. I don't care how many notifications my officers get that say this car is stolen and it was last seen going in this direction. Still can't chase the stolen car. The juice doesn't work the squeeze.
So, Captain, I'm asking.
Yes, sir.
So you're saying that this will be funded from the drug seizure money?
Yes, sir.
And does that mean that it will be continually funded through the drug seizure money?
That's our hope. That's our hope. At any time you're unwilling to participate in the Flock camera program or you're unable to pay for it, it's proprietary. They'll come take it down.
I have a resident that wanted to speak about the liability. They can't come today because actually Hung and I spoke with him, and they can't come today. But what are the liabilities? Because like you say, those cameras can't pick up the person in the car.
Correct.
They can't, so therefore if the car is stolen and the person is not there, because the cars are being stolen all the time. So that person who owns that car, they will be charged for that.
No, they won't be charged with anything. It's no different. It's like I just said about the white van on Dartmoor. We made contact with the owner of the vehicle. Right now, we're recovering cars, and they're still like fresh. Or we actually have to send Florissant to go knock on the person's door. They come to the door and go, "Do you know where your car is?" And the person's like, "Well, it was here in the driveway." And they go, "Oh, well, Normandy has it." So they got to enter it as stolen so we can then recover it. It's a huge mess, but that's how fast these cars are being stolen.
Captain, I guess a month or so ago, Chief Hall reported that there were 30 cars stolen in the Normandy area and the surrounding area, and only 11 were found. Was that flock involvement in that?
No, we're not utilizing Flock right now to recover stolen cars because we don't have access to it. We only make access to the Flock system right now because we're doing it through other agencies for like homicides, shootings, like the big things where we can beg. If we have major case, we invite 20 detectives from other agencies. They jump into their Flock and they start looking for us stuff. And that's how we were able to do the thing down there with the homicide because major case was activated.
Right, you've been piggybacking off.
Someone else's technology, yes. So.
Not to detract from anything that Councilman Nelson is saying, if I could clarify, just because I have the concerns of said resident, that's Mr. Thomas Moore, who was spoken about by Mr. Bates. So one of the, and I don't know if you can actually answer these, Captain, because you know it's not your system specifically.
I can try.
So Flock claims 70% of reported reduction in crime. And I would agree with this. How is that percentage calculated, and how is that metric pulled out of thin air? Because I'm not understanding how you can attribute something to a single system as we're identifying. This is, you know, an enhancement to Regis. It's an enhancement to everything else that is at your disposal. How are we getting to that type of a metric?
So I cannot speak for Flock and how they come up with their metric, but I know here in Normandy, what we would do is any crime that's solved utilizing Flock, we would compare against whether there's solvability without it.
Sure.
So that's how we would provide statistical data for you about its benefits.
Based on, like, with the examples from Detective Beekman, for instance, out of these cases, we have, you know, how many cases would we have used as a determining factor in a percentage of success? Like, is this out of, you know, 2,000 cases, or is this? I
can tell you our case clearance rate in Normandy used to be 28% above the national average, and I bet you right now it's probably 28% below the national average. And that's attributed to inexperienced and young police officers that are still learning. It's attributed to reductions in manpower and our ability to devote time to each individual case. And then it's also attributed to a lack in resources and technology and advancements that other people have that we just don't have. When you look at the list of who has it, the more affluent communities are the ones getting it, and they're seeing reductions in issues, and they're seeing reductions of people committing crimes because they know they have Flock. So people don't want to come in that town and do the smash and grab because they're going to be on camera. And at least if they do what Councilman Nelson said, they steal a car first. So it's a stolen car, but at least we have a vehicle identified and we have a place to start. So when we get that vehicle back, we DNA swab it. And hopefully the DNA comes back on anybody that's not the owner that was in the car. It's a great place to start. Everything that we develop is lead information only. We can't take anything, even if a plate or a warrant comes back on a plate, I can't walk up to that car and go, show me, you know, I can't do that. It's lead information. I have to develop that the person in the vehicle is one and the same with the person that has the warning or the warrant. And if it's a misdemeanor warrant or a traffic warrant, that's never the approach. The only time we conduct felony car stop is for a person that's wanted for a felony crime, like a homicide, a carjacking, an extremely violent and dangerous crime, where they would shoot at our people. Detective Sergeant Beekman and Officer Martin, and I'll leave you with this, a few years back, attempted to stop a vehicle that came down Bermuda and got onto eastbound 70. They got behind the vehicle, they activated their lights and sirens, and the vehicle failed to yield. However, the vehicle didn't take off at a high rate of speed. It just kind of traveled down Interstate 70 at normal speeds. It exited at Adelaide, and as the vehicle exited at Adelaide, the right front passenger door opened, and the passenger, you could hear them on the radio say, I think he's about to bail. The passenger jumped out of the vehicle with a high-powered rifle and began firing at our officers and shot up one of our police cars, and it was one of the scariest things I've ever heard, to sit there and hear our people screaming, send help right now, I need help right now. They're shooting at us, shots fired, and they're counting their bullets, and they're running out of magazines because this person is destroying our police car, and they're hunkered down, returning fire, just suppressive fire to live.
Was that in the city?
It was right off of Adelaide and 70. Yep. They destroyed our car, but our guys, they fought the good fight, and they both got a Medal of Valor, and by the grace of God, everyone survived. We later found out that that vehicle had committed a homicide earlier that morning, I believe it was Maryland Heights. They were driving past the Drury Inn, and they had killed someone in Florissant as well. The guy was just on a rampage. He went to Cabela's that morning, bought a bunch of guns, bought a bunch of ammo with a rifle, all these guns, and then just drove around firing wantonly and killing people. If we had had the flock camera, we would have at least known that that person was wanted because the car was entered, the license plate was entered, and they actually had identified the guy based upon the surveillance in Hazelwood. So Hazelwood wanted him, Maryland Heights wanted him, everybody wanted him, nobody could find him. And we were just lucky enough to try to pull him over for a simple moving violation and almost lost our lives. So I think with Flock, the computer that sits right there in their cars would have sent them a notification that said, warning, hazard, wanted for a homicide, and they probably could have just handled that a little bit differently.
Can you stay at the podium and
Sure.
answer additional questions? But I wanted Andy to address also some civil rights concerns that some of the council expressed, and you had some input on that?
Absolutely. And if anyone has any particular questions, feel free to ask and I'll try to answer them as best I can. So, in general, there's kind of a line, and this is kind of taken the real high-level view, starting with, the Supreme Court, dealing with Fourth Amendment issues. And there's a line of cases going back to a case called U.S. v. Jones. I can look up when exactly, it doesn't matter. So that was a case in which the police attached a GPS tracker to a suspect's car and actually tracked their movements for 28 days. And the Supreme Court found that that was a violation of the Fourth Amendment protection against search and seizure on the rationale that, unlike just a camera that, as Captain Sanders noted in her presentation, there is generally no expectation of privacy on public streets. But there's a difference between, an officer is behind you and they see your plate and they run your plate through the system and being tracked for 28 days, right? You do have a reasonable expectation of privacy in your movements throughout the world. And then there was a follow-up case, Carpenter versus United States, which applied that test and kind of analyzed the use of cell phone data and tracking someone's movement through the use of cell phone data. And again, cell phone data is protected under the Fourth Amendment. You have to have probable cause and a warrant to obtain cell phone data to track where somebody has been. There have been nothing that kind of high level has been considered with regard to the automatic license plate reader or ALPR technology, of which Flock is one, version. I was doing some research on how different courts have addressed various issues, including using this data to generate reasonable suspicion to justify a stop of a vehicle. And, a lot of the different circuits are split on these issues, which tells me that it's ripe for consideration by the Supreme Court probably in the next 5 to 10 years to resolve some of these issues, especially as this technology continues to become more widespread. In the Eighth Circuit, which is where we are located, there was a case in 2015 where a car, basically an LPR system, alerted police that there was a vehicle driving through this police department's jurisdiction that was associated with, and it's kind of vague what that means, associated with someone who is wanted for domestic assault known to be armed and dangerous. Again, as Captain Sanders notes, these cameras don't identify who's in the car, right? And that was one of the defendant's defenses. Well, you need some sort of, identifying information about me to pull me over, and the court said no. The fact that this alert came out, that we had enough reason, that the police had enough reason to believe that this vehicle was associated with someone who was armed and dangerous and wanted for a domestic assault, was sufficient to give the police reasonable suspicion to justify the stop. And from there, due to the defendant's behavior during the stop, probable cause to actually perform a search was ascertained, and the gentleman was found to be a felon in possession of a firearm, and he was also in possession of heroin. So as far as using this information, if the Normandy PD was to use this kind of information to justify investigatory stops, I'm not concerned about that, right? I think, I think these cameras can be used to justify stops of vehicles. If, you know, the plate comes off and it generates an alert that it's stolen or associated with someone who's wanted, something like that. The kind of the tougher question is whether or not this technology creates the kind of surveillance issues that are associated with being able to track someone's movements throughout the city or beyond. And based on my conversations with Captain Sanders about how this actual technology works, I'm not sure, at least how Flock operates, I'm not sure that it would be able to be used in a way that is similar to using cell phone data, because the data automatically disappears after 30 days.
It purges, and it's
So-
rolling 30 days from the date it was gathered.
So unless material was being saved, and of course I think we probably would need some sort of reasonable suspicion or probable cause to have a reason to save that material, right? Part of an ongoing investigation, something along those lines. It's just not going to be possible to go back and use this material to track John Smith's whereabouts throughout the day on, you know, August 2nd, 2022, right?
Andy, I read through most of this that Yolanda sent to us, and the future aspirations of Flock has to do with more gathering of information on people and data saving. Yolanda, am I reading this correctly? What you?
Well, yeah, because they haven't, according to that article, they haven't figured out what they want to do with, like, how they want to basically, like, I guess, project Flock into the future. So what they'll actually do with the data that they're gathering.
And I read that as well. And I think that the addition of the software that they're calling Raven, if you read the ACLU article, I think that's really cool too. It's the shot spotter. It's exactly what you see anytime you go into the city and you see those red and blue flashing lights on every corner. It's the shot spotter. When someone shoots, it's going to tell us someone's shooting at Natural Bridge and Lucas and Hunt.
Right.
So if I may jump back into Councilwoman Rosso's question, I also read through the material and I read through the case law that is cited in the legal analysis. A lot of that is what I'm actually addressing now. There's one other case I would like to address. You know, it's always tough to kind of anticipate or guess basically at what the courts are going to do with a technology that hasn't been implemented yet and it hasn't been worked out yet. So I'd hate to, you know, pontificate without a real basis to that. As far as what Flock is implementing now, it sounds like it is fairly limited in what it can do, and it is not as powerful a technology as, for example, cell phone data. Now, a different data system, and one of the cases that is cited in the ACLU case, this is a 2019 case out of Massachusetts, Commonwealth v. McCarthy. This was not Flock, this was a different ALPR data system that had a longer shelf life on the data collected. But basically the police department was using data to track the movements of a suspected drug dealer. And he particularly, it was his, not movements all around town, it was his daily movements over a 3-month period across a very specific bridge that was associated with his trafficking. And that very limited use of the data was held to be, it did not violate his privacy interest in his movements and his whereabouts. So again, I think that is comparable to what Captain Sanders was talking about, for example, in the burglary scenario where you have an active call, you have multiple people who are reporting a white van in the vicinity of a burglary, and it's captured on, say, 3 cameras in the city. Again, this isn't, you know, weeks worth of tracking an individual car throughout the city of Normandy or even the entire Normandy PD footprint, right? These are much more limited, immediate uses of the technology. And so, again, barring some sort of additional developments in the technology that would expand the surveillance powers, if and when that happens, let's say the city elects to implement Flock. If and when Flock comes back and says, hey, we've got all these additional new goodies that we can offer, I would want to come back and offer, my opinion on those, but for purposes of today, I want to limit it to what Flock actually has on offer. Because for example, I don't think it would be impossible for the city to, at a later date, decide, Flock has really gone down the wrong path, and I think we want to change our affiliation with this company, right? But as far as what they're offering today and its capabilities, it seems like it is fairly limited, and I don't think it necessarily, at least in the way that it's being proposed to be used by the Normandy PD, violates privacy interests held by individuals in the city of Normandy.
One question.
Yes, sir.
So is there a contract we have to sign with them for annual or?
It's a year-to-year contract.
Annual contract?
Yes, sir.
And on that, Sam, can you speak to the money that we're going to use from the drug seizure is the initial purchase? Can that be used for yearly maintenance?
So, County Sanders just recommended that we could use it from drug seizure. But if the council's willing to incorporate it into the fiscal, operating budget in future years, I think that'd probably be more responsible, especially if we're gonna get several cameras, because the money from drug seizure, you get it when you get it, and
It fluctuates.
generally use that on capital type items. But, and also just, even if you just get one, that's $2,500 a year, I believe.
Correct.
And that would give our department access to the database entirely.
Right.
So,
I see.
you get 2, 3, and then you can do what Kevin Sanders is proposing, getting all the choke points. Even if you just get one, then our officers have, access and you could pick a road and get quite a bit of traffic in the
So
city.
what you're saying, we get one in our city and we can still utilize Bell Ridges and Pasadena Hills?
And Ladou's and
Ladue,
all over the
Kirkwood, or-
country.
Chesterfield, yeah.
When you're searching, you're actually not searching into their database, you're searching for a vehicle, and everything that every Flock camera picks up everywhere is in that database.
That's why it's called the flock, because
'Cause it's like
each camera's a single bird and.
Oh, so we don't need
fly
3 or
together.
4.
You put those roads in the
We actually, the reason we were wanting more is because obviously, the more of anything, except for maybe food, the better. Thank God for this podium, guys. But yeah, we want to put it at the choke points because in theory, nobody gets in or out of Normandy and commits a crime and gets away with it. That was the thought process behind it. Who's going to come in here and commit a crime and get away with it? There's only so many ways in and out of here. And Belle Reve is covering one of the ways for us, which was super awesome, so.
Well,
So repeat which
Steve,
points
please.
you
Councilman
wanted.
Saxon had a question.
I'm sorry, repeat which areas you wanted at. So if we get one, how many would cover the whole?
If we only got one, I would say put it at Lucas and Hunt and Natural Bridge, because I mean, all criminals go east normally. 99% of the issues we have, everyone flees east. Or they get to the highway, then they go east, but they always go east. No one runs
We want to
west.
go to the city, right?
Nobody runs, well, yeah. But yeah, we would put it at Natural Bridge and Lucas and Hunt, but ideally, the spots again are Natural Bridge and Lucas and Hunt, Bermuda and Woodstock. It's a hot area right there, Bermuda and Woodstock, right where Ferguson borders us. And the last one would be along Florissant Road. We would ideally like to put it right at the train trestle right there, because we understand there's city streets that are in apartment complexes prior to that place.
Yeah.
But a lot of the crime happens beyond there.
So, Captain, so it'd be advantageous for us to get 3
Yes.
from the beginning, and
But
definitely.
practicable if we just got one, it would be a good start.
Well, and it's a test, you can see it as a test trial. You still have concerns.
I understand. I'm a little confused about what I remember from the gentleman's presentation. Because from what I gathered through his presentation, during that 30-day window, someone that has administrative privileges to that, not necessarily just patrolman, it would be it would be a captain or whatever, but they would have the authority, if they documented it, that they could download some of that information just before it's written over.
We would
Before it's
have,
purged.
we would have to do that for a police report. If I'm going to document where I got the license plate number, I'm going to have to pull the picture from Flock and add it to the report
Right,
to show that that's how I came across that license plate as an investigative tool.
but with such limited access, I'm not sure maybe on that it would work because there's very limited details.
At that point, it becomes evidence, and it's subject to all evidence seizure and.
Okay, so that's why I want to make sure I'm clear, because I distinctly remember us asking him if they can download it during that 30-day period if necessary, and there was some kind of documentation that he was talking about, yeah, you can do it with the administrative privileges within that time frame.
Yes, you have to prove that there's a police report, that there's a
Right.
criminal justice, it's
Right.
part of that, like, the audit, but it's real time, because now you want to actually take something out of Flock. So you have to prove why you want to take it out, and then you would maintain that document for compliance purposes and auditing purposes.
Right, but I just wanted to make sure I was clear with that there would be potential needs to download some of that for investigation purposes
Well, I don't want people taking anything out of Flock for investigative purposes.
or whatever.
If it's evidence, take it. If it's evidence, seize it, like
Well,
evidence.
That's what I meant, is
Yes,
evidence.
yes, sir. If it's evidence, I expect for them to seize it and handle that properly.
Right, I just want to make sure that I'm clear that there is potentially a need down the road that they could download some of that if it's necessary.
Well, yes, sir, of course. And then another thing that I just wanted to quickly highlight is, I just want you guys to know, Flock is not like video surveillance. It's literally a high-res camera that takes pictures of license plates. That's it.
Yeah.
It's a high-res camera that just takes pictures of license plates. So it's not a rolling video. And when you're going through the database, you're actually just getting a still image of a car. And the part that's zoomed in is the plate. And then the camera picks up the angles of the car. So if, let's say, that black Mercedes that hit you had heavy front end damage, I can type black Mercedes, heavy front end damage. And Flock is going to tell me every car that drove past a Flock camera with heavy front end damage.
No, I got you, that's.
And it's
what I-
still my job as the investigator to sort through that information. The due diligence, the system is literally, it's just a tool. It's no different than giving us a radar device and we deploy a radar device or any other tool that law enforcement uses to better ourselves. What we do with that tool is contingent on the type of officers that we're hiring. And I'd like to think, I feel very confident that we're hiring people of the utmost moral turpitude that would not violate any of the trust that we bestow upon them. This is a position of trust.
Well, Captain, I want to ask you this, last question.
Sure.
Now, what range would that camera have? Because if that car is coming up the street, half a block, when will that camera take the picture? When?
About 30 yards, 20 yards.
I can't give you the specifics because I don't work for Flock. I could get them back and they could give you more of the analytics on it. But if it crosses the intersection, if it crosses the camera, it's going to take a picture of the vehicle. And it's going to take a picture of the vehicle license plate. And
Front and back, or just the front?
It takes a picture of the front and the back and the reason I know this is because I've actually seen Flock, and when we were in training mode, one of the officers here wanted to see how good it was, and so we put in his license plate into Flock, and we just wanted to see like what does it tell us, and it was actually pretty funny. He works secondary in South St. Louis City, and he lives in Wentzville, and it picked him up he was like, oh, look, that's me right past the gas station. And it was a picture of his car from the front. Then there was another one where he was like going to secondary and it picked him up like on his way to South St. Louis City.
Okay.
And he was like, that's me.
Because you launched his license plate.
Question.
Yes.
Where's it getting a picture of his car?
It takes a picture of the vehicle and the plate.
I thought it was only a license plate here.
It's an LPR software that reads the plate and transmits data, but Flock is a camera system that takes still images.
So why can't it see the person in the car?
Because the camera's not, the algorithm of the camera is not that sophisticated. The LPR software is actually reading the digits on the plate to transmit the plate data. But the pictures are just a general photograph of a car.
It's targeting the license plate itself.
So I've got a question. I certainly don't want to do this without the approval of the council, but do we need the approval of the council, and do we need that in the form of a motion or a resolution, or do we just get general consensus?
If there's gonna be an annual contract, we could bring that. at-
Okay, good,
at the
that
next
that would
meeting
guarantee
and
the approval of
get
the
a
council
resolution.
approving a contract then. Okay, I just want to know what tool we use to get approval of the council,
Yeah.
if there's consensus to move forward with this.
And if you guys want to talk to the people from Flock and ask them some more of the logistical questions regarding, you know, the range, at what point it takes pictures, you know, what the process is for downloading data from Flock into evidence and things like that, I can make them available.
How much cash do we have available that we could commit to this right now from drug seizure funds?
Well, I was anticipating putting forth the funds for all 3 cameras preliminarily
That's what I was saying.
75.
from the drug seizure money, yes.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. I mean, first year, get all the hot.
So if we bring this in the form of a contract, I want to hear from the council. Is there consensus, and is it for 1 camera, 2 cameras, 3 cameras?
Wait a minute,
Well,
so,
I thought you was gonna get us some documentation too.
What type of documentation?
Stuff like
I
that.
can get you that documentation no matter what, I just don't know
I'm
that.
not ready to make a move without
Okay.
seeing documentation.
remind me of the
On calls for service?
documentation, Tony.
Okay.
Tony, remind me of the documentation, what did we?
Calls for service,
Pardon?
calls for service.
A more detailed report.
Justify the need.
Oh, yes.
Justify the need.
Correlating data, correlating.
And again, I want to stress to you that I could provide you with infinite amounts of data, but the software that we're looking for is not relevant to calls for service. It's more relevant to solvability of those calls. To helping us, it's a solvability tool to help us solve crime.
So if it's not for calls of service, so it's.
No, I'm saying I can provide the calls for service data, but it doesn't have any articulable metric to why we want it. Does that make sense?
It's kind of a counterfactual situation. We have a call or a case. For one scenario, we solve it because we have Flock, the other we don't, but we don't know which cases we can solve with Flock and without Flock.
I'm not gonna be.
But when
7 out of 10 crimes occur utilizing the vehicle.
But again, that goes back to my previous point of, you know, having Flock tout its own legitimacy with a 70% reported reduction in crime. That's neither here nor there. You can't actually say you have a 70% reduction in crime when you can't correlate
It's,
two separate points of.
right, and that's my point. It's not really, like, calls for service don't dictate whether we get Flock or not.
Right,
Because there are some places that have relatively low call volume. I mean, Ellisville has it. Do you think Ellisville has a lot of crime?
Here's the thing. Okay, you mentioned the stolen cars, so would this system help as far as stolen cars?
The system would only alert us that a stolen car passed the Flock camera. And my officers are not going to go up there to chase a moving vehicle. They can go to the area and see if the vehicle's been abandoned, but they're not going to go start chasing stolen cars to try to recover them. We don't pursue stolen cars, no. What it would help me do is if a stolen car passed at the intersection of Woodstock and Bermuda, which is where the majority of the dumping ground is for all of our recovered stolen
So it
vehicles,
would alert you.
it would alert us that a stolen car just passed it, and that officer that's assigned to that sector could head that way. And if they get there to, you know, the little park at the Ted Jones Trail,
Right,
they might see somebody there dumping a stolen car, boom. We can actually maybe chase them on foot and catch them, but we're not gonna, if the car's in motion or there's nothing there, then there's nothing
Right,
that
we
we
say
can.
chasing cars, I said, would it alert you?
Oh, yes, it's gonna,
So, Tony, would it be helpful, like, unsolved crimes is what you're looking for versus
No,
solved
I mean,
crimes?
I need to see, because.
Something to justify.
Exactly,
Yeah.
something to justify the car.
I think what he's just saying, like, he's just saying that we want to know how many cars are like landing here in Normandy, and then how many cars are just like being dumped here.
and I'll get the data for you, but that's a lower, we're not gonna be using Flock primarily for that purpose.
What I'm looking at is brand new toy that you guys want. Do you really need it?
If we wanna solve crimes, we do. Well, only a few officers, and it's hard to get information. The camera is going to catch the license plate that the human eye can't catch. 7 out of 10 crimes that are committed involve the use of a vehicle. If the vehicle passes the camera, at least we have a lead. Right now, we are dealing with a lot of cases with limited leads.
So Captain, 3 cameras would cost $7,500.
Roughly, sir. A little bit more. The installation is, I think it's $2,850 for installation, and then every year thereafter, I believe it's $2,500.
Okay, so no monthly payments or nothing?
One-time fee annually.
One-time payment, and then once a year, it's another service call?
Yes, and they do all the maintenance on the cameras.
So it's 2,500 per camera?
Yes, sir.
And then is it
Let me ask you another question.
And that's why we're agreeable to paying for it the first year out of the drug seizure money that officers got from drug seizures. So it's no expense necessarily to the city. It's federally seized funds from the work of the officers.
So let me ask you another question. Didn't we just put new computers in all the cars?
No, not all of them, but the ones that we purchased, yes, the new cars all have computers.
Okay, so.
7,
where
because
I'm
the chief
getting
has
at-
one.
Where I'm getting at now, would that money be used more efficiently, putting new computers in all the cars?
The computers in the cars are $3,500 a piece. So the computers in the cars cost more than one flock camera.
But how many cars don't have the new computers?
Only 7 of the 8 cars that were purchased, because the chief, of course, has one, it's not outfitted. So 7 of the 8 cars, computers were purchased for them, and they're actually in use by the officers. The remainder of the fleet still has the old computers and the antiquated computers, but we're still using them. They still connect to Regis, they still connect to the database. Over time, they'll have to be cycled out.
But they're still working?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, we don't have any unfunctional equipment. Tom has actually done a really great job with
I'm
that.
just covering all the bases now, because you guys did come to us for new computers in the cars.
We did. Well, if we have a police car, it has to have a computer.
So how much money is in the drug seizure fund?
Over $100,000.
I think it's pushing 150.
But it can only be used for specific
So,
things. It can't be used for purchasing police cars. It can't be used to supplement budgets, or, I'm sorry, supplant, it has to be used to supplement. You can buy things, you can invest back into things and activities and training that helps with seizing more drugs and getting more drugs off the street. So it's really particular about the things that you can use it for. Cameras is one of them because it's a crime prevention thing. So we're using the crime prevention loop to get the flock cameras and using the drug seizure money to do it so the city doesn't have to.
Could we have used some of that money for computers?
No.
We couldn't?
No, because we standardized, when we started purchasing police vehicles and putting cameras, computers in them, we standardized it. That's a set thing that the city does with all of our police vehicles. We completely equip our vehicles. So we can't use it to pay for things the city usually finances. We have to find we're gonna use it to buy radar. We're not getting another radar trailer, but we're buying the kind like you see in Florissant that actually go on the poles, the solar kind, and we're going to deploy several of them. We're going to invest in stop signs and cones and things like that that Public Works doesn't have, because we noticed that when the lights go out around here, there's no directional travel at any of the intersections. We can't put officers at every intersection where there's no lights. So we're going to erect stop signs there and use cones and bike. So we're using the drug seizure money extremely resourcefully. We've actually even thought about as a drug prevention tool, we're using it for training. We have one guy here that's actually, he gets the majority of the money. So since he gets the drug seizure money, I want him to keep going to drug seizure class. He's going to a lot of drug seizure classes. Sergeant Gary. He's a great interdiction officer. He's the one that you see up on 70. He's got tractor trailers pulled over. He's like Magneto. Guns and drugs just come to him. They do. He's very talented at what he does. So I want to invest in his craft. If he's good at that, let's keep him working. We have a car. I believe it's a Mercedes or something, that we have a vehicle that's out there that we seized, that he seized.
So let's,
So we got lots of cool stuff.
No, one last thing about the drug seizure money, and she touched on it, you cannot use it to supplant operational expenses in the police department.
Right.
That would result in the money being taken back and you paying it back and all of that, so.
And we'd never get it
there's
again.
strict guidelines, so a computer is something that it's regular, standard form, general issue. It's something that the police officer needs to do their job. That comes out of our operation, we paid out of it, line item, year after year in our budget. We can't now go in and pay for it with drug money and then take that money that we were gonna spend and spend it in Public Works. That would be very bad. So how it's supposed to be used is for training, and things that help with drug interdiction. Like, you can't buy a police vehicle, but maybe you can buy an interdiction van or something like that. That is, and they really would like you to spend it on things to get more drug seizures. and
Yes.
Things of that nature, so.
But Sam, when you mentioned then changing it over to the budget, wouldn't that be then if we start paying for it, then they're gonna say, you know, it's part of the city's budget, and so we're not wanting this money coming for drug seizure to be spent on cameras anymore?
It was specifically applied to the Flock software, where we couldn't come back later and add 10 more Flock cameras and then use drug seizure
No,
money for
I'm
it.
just.
No, I appreciate your point, I was thinking of the same thing.
Yeah.
At what point does it become just a routine tool that we use? But at that point, we can determine whether it's worth the money or not worth the money.
Yeah, eventually, whether we, and maybe we'll work that out at the next meeting where it comes from. But eventually we'll have to get into
But
operational
isn't it too
budget.
soon to, like, so this next year, the drug monies will pay for it. And so maybe next year's budget will have, you know, 11 months or 12 months of using it,
Yeah.
so that we can transfer it, talk about transferring it over.
If you're
the-
I think that's a
interested.
good idea.
I agree. It's a year-to-year subscription. If after a year Flock isn't helping us, why would we keep it? We just spent $7,500 of drug seizure money and didn't get anything from it. But if we solve a lot of stuff
Yeah,
and the
you
juice is
solve
worth the
this
squeeze,
many cases with it.
I can bring you a report that says we solved this with Flock.
Yeah, sure.
Let's wrap this portion up.
Sure.
Captain, you're tasked then with providing whatever information you can to justify, additional information to justify the use of the money for this, and
Didn't we say that we can't really get that information?
And I'm going, what I said was the two are not intermingled, they're not married. However, I'm not opposed to just providing you with the data that you're asking for. I'm of strong belief you should have had it a long time ago. So to be very clear, I want to just hear from you guys, I've got my pen ready. You guys are looking for calls for service information, and this includes in Normandy and all of the cities we provide contract service for, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, specifically, what time frame are you looking for that data from?
for the next meeting.
No,
The
no,
last 3 months.
what time period? You want a year? You want to know what happened in the past
What
year?
I recommend
To
is
start now.
we continue doing the annual report.
We're too far behind, it's due in April, and we don't have any data. The chief should have been,
Well,
we can get one for you next year.
yeah, whenever the annual report comes out, but going forward, we do the annual report, and then.
Oh, we have to,
And we continue with the monthly council meetings and maybe expand in the detail there. I mean,
whatever.
Written report of services monthly at the meetings? I don't know.
I think, and what I don't want to get away from what Councilman Evans and Councilwoman Campbell are asking me for. I think that they're asking me to provide them right now, which I can go run the data right now.
Not right now, I mean.
But I could do it now. It's that simple. But I want to know specifically what time frame. Do you guys want data from this time last year to today's date today? So 1 year worth of data? How many calls?
1 year.
Okay, so calls for service.
And maybe some subjective data that would just specific examples of unsolved crimes that this might have helped.
I can get that from Detective Sergeant Beekman. He has a list of all working crimes that are, that he is working in the
That may be
Bureau.
something that would be really helpful.
Right.
One thing I
Especially
like to have,
stolen cars and recovered cars.
Say what, Tony?
Stolen and recovered cars.
But as Captain Sanders has pointed out, that's not necessarily within the scope of and usability of Flock, though.
They better not be, I don't want them chasing
They're
the
not,
stuff.
they're not,
Well, that's what they said.
But it's data.
Hey.
But I can-
Data.
I wrote it down, I wrote car crime. So unsolved crimes, car crime, calls for service. I'm telling you, the tickets are going to be steep, but since in the past couple months, it's on the rise. I'm pleased to report that it's up.
Can we see just one digital shot of its operation? Just a digital shot of Flock taking some shots of the car so we can see.
I can get a Flock representative to do that for you because
right, that's
Yeah.
nuts.
that would almost kind of go into that training mode where you're going in there and you're using the system to see how it works.
That would violate what we were just.
It's disgusting doing.
Controls, yeah.
Absolutely.
Trying to get everybody in trouble?
He was testing us. He was testing me to see if we really are not gonna abuse it.
I wanna see it working.
I can get them out here and I can, like, set up a thing to do a demonstration.
Wait a minute, is this, it's been so long ago, no. If this is his, presentation, no, it's not there.
So you're saying that 30 feet or so you did?
I didn't say 30 feet, I said I have no clue.
You have no clue? Okay, no problem, no problem.
Yeah, okay, so tickets, car crime, unsolved crimes in general, calls for service, and you guys want to know about active investigations, how many active investigations we have for unsolved crimes in Normandy?
Yep, that would be helpful.
All right.
Is it possible to know, like you said, with the placement of the cameras, which streets are the most busy for speeding or accidents, or?
But you can't.
So we wouldn't use Flock for that.
No, I'm just saying from data, can you just tell us what areas are the hot spots? Like with this area has more speeding, this area has more accidents, this area has more, just from the data. I'm not asking about Flock, I'm just asking for data.
So speeding
How can you track?
everywhere, and accidents, I can answer that question right now. Speeding is prevalent not just in Normandy, but all of our contract cities, it's everywhere. It's everywhere. You get on the highway, everybody's speeding. Everywhere you go, everyone's speeding. It's everywhere. So speeding is everywhere. There's not one place that's, higher than any other. Mayor Beckman told me a story about how a car came down Augusta. You said, what, 50, 60 miles an hour?
It was 60 miles an hour.
Yeah, back to back and kind of got up on a couple wheels. Yeah, so, I mean, it's our main arterial
So there's no
roads.
way to narrow that down to like Natural Bridge or Lucas and Hunt or Bermuda. There's no way.
Not really, because the only way you can measure speed data is by the amount of summonses issued to people for speed, and we'd have to be writing a lot of tickets to give you a comprehensive report. I'm trying to get them back to writing tickets. They're doing okay.
What's with the little cars? The little cars always fine, the little cars.
What are you talking about?
He's talking about the little clown cars. He says the little ones always seem to be going faster.
Yeah, the little.
Big things seem to, big things appear to be moving slower though. It's with the theory of an object in motion.
Oh my goodness.
Bigger vehicles look like they're moving slower, but a lot of times it's just the size.
Yeah, I don't think we have
So,
empirical data, Yolanda, to put that.
one thing I can tell you is I already know the hotspot for
Oh,
a vehicle.
I heard my name. What did you say?
Well, I was saying that what you're asking for, I don't think we have any tool to gather that type of information.
Okay, I was gonna ask.
Yeah.
But I can tell her accidents, we can track accidents, and 99% of our accidents are on Interstate 70.
Yeah, I believe
Is it possible to, I don't know if this is a question like before or after we decide, but like as far as the personnel policy for how Flock is utilized by officers, and like who has access, and like what they have to, like what information they have to do, like for logging in and logging out, and like consequences for using the system inappropriately. Is that something that you do before? Is that
Those things
something
already exist. Those policies already exist because of our access to, like Ellie Webb, CGIS, Regis. Flock falls right in there in that same existing policy as a confidential law enforcement database, and abuse of the database will result in internal affairs investigations and can lead to suspensions and or termination from the Normandy Police Department if it's determined that you're misusing any law enforcement database. So we already have pretty comprehensive policies that cover use of systems, and then we also have very comprehensive policy that cover information and data sharing. So if I see something in the law enforcement database, I can't legally go tell Joe Citizen what I just saw. I haven't,
So is that part of the policy, something that we could like actually look at, since we're talking about Flock? Is that, you know what I mean?
Sure, that's.
I can send you those general orders. I'll give them to Sam, and then Sam can send them to everybody. So that way you guys have our general orders concerning access to the law enforcement database and information sharing and privacy.
And Captain, if I could just get the contact information for the Flock representative so I could ask that person directly.
Absolutely, I will send you his email, and I'm actually not going to send you Hector's email. Hector is nice, but he's not really
He
impressive.
wasn't that effective.
Lisa Dunn is his boss, and Lisa Dunn was out of town, so Hector kind of got assigned to be the spokesperson. It's like I'm supposed to be here, but like, Officer Mack shows up. It's a little, yeah, it's not gonna have the same thing.
Yeah, and I know this is a little bit off topic, but it's a work session. I just wanna, so St. Louis County, I'm gonna share my screen here. St. Louis County has a municipal crime map. And because we use St. Louis County for our calls, for our radio services, every crime in the city of Normandy, you can look up on this map and you can pull different areas. So you can see Normandy's here, and this is all the crime incidents that happened in the month of September. And you can select the category of crime, whether it's, you know, abduction, kidnapping. They have all different kinds. You can put all these different types of filters in. We can expand it for an entire year.
There you go, because I was gonna say, you know, they're delayed on getting these reports in, so
Right,
there might be some
yeah.
September stuff that's not
So,
approved yet.
yeah, give them a few months to get that. But, yeah, and this is anyone can pull this up, and and you have to go, the one that's on their website link is out of date for some reason, but if you go to St. Louis County GIS Center website, interactive maps, you can pull up the crime map, and it won't show traffic type stuff, but, you know, crimes, if you're curious where the hotspots
So
are.
which one are the crimes there? All of those dots?
Yeah.
They're all just different
And
types
this
of.
is over a year is the filter I have on right now.
But it's not just us, it's various municipalities.
Yeah,
But you can view Normandy specific crime.
Oh.
Yeah, but it is kind of interesting to see, and some of these are contract cities. Like you see here, this is this is Bell Ridge.
Yeah, look at that.
And Cool Valley,
We're working on it.
yeah. So, and I just said, we can get you all the data, but we do not have the mapping software or the technicians to put this together. And the data we're pulling is
Raw data.
from this database, and St. Louis County puts a lot of money into making it accessible to citizens, so.
And we have the law enforcement version, so when I print the calls for service, it's going to tell me I'm gonna have to run it in monthly increments. Just monthly increments, because think about it, it only gives you 500 responses at a time. So when I do your monthly report, I have to search from the 1st to the 15th, and then from the 16th to like the 28th or the 30th. So that way, because it'll say more than 500 results returned, I'm not showing you this. So,
Man, I'm looking at Northwoods, man,
It's mostly the golf course, I think.
Do Normandy.
I think that might be.
No, that's Northwoods.
Yeah, but like if we put our filter in Normandy, and then you can expand this here, these are the types of crime, so we're,
Oh, cool.
in the past year, we were 58% property crime, 19% society, and then,
What's society mean?
they have the definitions on here, but I'm not exactly sure.
Domestic?
Yeah, I think so, domestic type situations, and then you have, crimes against persons, so.
Wouldn't that be
Yeah.
domestic?
Just thought you should know about that if you're
We'll check that out.
looking for some data.
Captain, thank you for taking on additional duties.
no worries, thank you for the invitation to just at least hear it out, because I know a lot of times when you hear it, and I read the ACLU article, and I was like, well, thank God this is an opinion piece, because it's got a lot of strong points, I got a lot of research to do. So I did read through it, it was a good article, it made a lot of good observations about how this, like any technology, can be abused, and as an administrator, it makes me more mindful of how we intend to use it. So I mean, you know, we don't always have to agree with everything we read, but you can take the valuable and key points and take some lessons away from it. So thank you for the article, I read it, and like I said, I really have some strict implementation on how I believe we should be using this and what we should be using it for. I just want to solve crime. I want to get us away from just responding to take the report and actually catching bad guys and putting them in jail when they need to be. Like, there's crime and then there's punishment. The reason there's a lot of crime is because we're lacking in punishment. So, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question. Is this the normal meeting? Because I read the. Oh, Lord.
No, this is a special workshop,
Oh,
and I
yeah,
can get you the agenda. This is what was being discussed.
I saw it on the post, it said the 25th.
yeah, it was
They had a public hearing.
Scheduled to address a few specific items.
Oh, I did have one question. I'm sorry. Would it be beneficial to, or maybe the camera doesn't do this, to put, I didn't know, sorry, or Captain Sanders' opinion, to put it like at Hosel Park?
I mean, the actual locations, we can have that discussion. I think that would be, the police are gonna make some recommendations and we'll prioritize.
But I'm saying like, if we put it in Hosel Park, like,
It would lose its value because
Yeah, I just-
10,000 cars get off at, Woodstock and Bermuda, and maybe 100 people pull in and out of Hosel in a week.
Right.
but what
So
about
we-
like after, like that after hours time?
Well, to get to Hosel
Would that
Park,
be something that the camera could see or no?
No, it's not, it's a still image. It takes license plate and vehicle pictures, so it's not going to give us,
So when you agree that we probably need more sophisticated camera system in Hosel Park?
absolutely, you know what, we could, okay, I know I said I was done, really quickly. So these cameras that are in here, look at this, look at the clarity of this system. It's beautiful, isn't it? You guys bought a really, really nice camera system for this building. We went across the street to get some radios to take them to county. We came back, the door was open. We used the camera on the front of this building and zoomed all the way across the street and found a car and found the person that went in the side door when we had left, because I guess the people from .gov had come and they left the door unlocked, or Gov Deals or whatever. And we were able to see that person, and actually Sam saw it in action. It was pretty cool. We zoomed all the way in, found the person. They didn't steal anything, thank God. They thought they were in court and went in the wrong building, but we knew that someone had been in there because we closed everything up and we came back and it was open. These cameras are super sophisticated. I think you guys have an additional 40 licenses on this software that exists right now. All of our supervisors have access to this camera system where we can actually look at what's going on in this building and outside this building real time. If you guys bought additional cameras, which there is expense, Sam's like, oh, don't talk about buying stuff. But if you did, if let's say you bought an outdoor camera for Hosel Park, you could add it to the network we're already on, and we would be able to see it like we can see this building. We're about to be able to see Public Works. The police can see it real time, and we actually use these. There's only maybe a 2 or 3 second delay, like when the officers come in the door, but we use these cameras, they're great.
But is that something we can use with Caesar money too?
No.
But I mean, that's a good idea.
We've got our seizure money budgeted out. We got some things that we're lacking and we don't want to keep begging on you guys, so. All right.
Thank you.
Represent to the mayor.
She said she was here for the public hearing about the park, I believe, and she saw the sign, she didn't know, so.
Yeah, we discussed that earlier.
yeah, that's been, that particular portion of the meeting's been closed, I'm sorry.
Ma'am, what is your name?
But I will, yeah, let me get your name
Joy
and number.
Boyd.
Joy Moy?
Boyd, B-O-Y-D.
What ward are you in?
Okay.
What ward do you live in?
What's your address, dear?
Bird Hills,
Bird Hills?
5321 Kirkland.
Okay.
Vernon Hills, Ward 2.
Thank you.
Yeah, let her ask a quick question.
Let her, yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
she's.
We gotta stick to the protocol, we gotta stick to protocol. We closed that.
What's
And
your
I
address?
will call you and have a conversation.
What's your
Yeah.
address again?
Tomorrow. So you gonna call me tomorrow?
I will. Did you leave a phone number?
She didn't sign in over here, dear.
Sign in over there, and we'll get a hold of you. Thank you.
And I'll stay right around the corner, I'll come talk to you.
I won't be there because I got a couple of meetings.
Oh,
I got a meeting in the morning, I got.
No, tonight, after we're adjourning,
All right, let's move on. Let's move on. Discussion of business license zoning code. Sam, you've got some
there's more.
information you'd like to give the council about some challenges we've got.
Yeah, well, and we've talked about this a few times already, and I believe Councilwoman Rosso asked to discuss this some tonight, so if there's specific questions, I'm happy to answer those. But Andy and I and Kiana are currently working on updating our business license section of the code first. Partly because it should be a fairly easy section to update. Now, and we've had this discussion before, a business license is essentially a tax that we put on businesses in the city of Normandy. And there's state statutes that dictate what kind of businesses we can tax, how we can tax them. But essentially, if a business moves in, it's consistent with the zoning, which is the other half that we'll be discussing, then they can get a license, and then they pay the fee. And then currently, our fee is based off of, for everything, it's based off of gross sales, which really only works for retail businesses. One of the changes that we're gonna propose is to, for non-retail type businesses, do some other type of fee structure, whether it's by square footage of the building, by this type of trade, you know, if it's a barber shop, this much per chair, that kind of stuff. Different cities have different schemes. And so that's the main purpose of a business license, is to collect the tax. And you can revoke a business license. And the revocation section of the business license could be a section that we also look at when we update the ordinance. If you revoke someone's business license, then they have to shut down. If they don't pay their business license, then they have to shut down, right? But they're entitled to a hearing and everything. There's due process that has to be done, and there has to be a reason why you're shutting down the business or revoking their license. It's not like liquor licenses either, that as long as they pay the fee, and there's no vote for renewal or anything like that. There's no neighborhood approval. It's just, you know, you pay your fee, your business license gets renewed. So is there any question? And we'll be sending an ordinance out hopefully very shortly for a first reading at the meetings a week from today. So I'm sure.
I think one of the other things we requested is, what are other municipalities doing in regards to business applications? And I guess we were looking at the application, we were talking about that. So are you updating the application for businesses also?
So I updated the application actually last December to be consistent with everything we need for our code. There's really all the application needs is, you know, the address, what's the business name, what is the business, which is important to determine if it can be taxed, or if, you know, how we're going to tax it, and then information about the gross sales if it's a retail business. And that's really all we need to license and tax the building.
I mean, this has been a long time ago, but Yolanda brought samples of business applications, which included like vision and mission of the municipality, what they expected from the business. And so I don't know, I'm remembering those conversations, and remembering that our application was quite deficit in information being retrieved from the business. Yolanda, are you remembering that?
Yeah, the ones that I kind of researched had that were more in depth about like going before like the boards and commissions, and you know, like if this is the business that you want, getting some type of, and one I'm thinking about in particular is one that comes to mind is like Clayton, where, I mean, you can't just go in and pay $50 and just, you know, have a business. So I guess I'm wondering more like when it comes to like our boards and commissions, what power do they have with not certifying, but like approving a business license, and then also for those businesses that have gotten their licenses, this is something that has clearly happened, that we all know, that have gotten their business licenses illegally, and then they continue to exercise those licenses. How do we as a community like rectify that?
You know, Andy, I'm gonna let you speak to that, but if I'm not mistaken, Clayton, for example, is a charter city. They have a lot more they can do a lot more with regulating, but go ahead and address that question from.
Yeah, so. I don't want to start at too high of a level because it might not be relevant. Well, so basically, as a third-class city, Normandy has the power to do the things that the Missouri legislature has empowered it to do. And in regard specifically to business licensing and business license fees, there is a particular chapter in the Missouri statutes, Chapter 94, which sets forth what businesses and the terms under which a third-class city can license certain businesses and under which a fourth-class city can license certain businesses. Now, a charter city like Clayton or trying to think of other charter cities.
Kirkwood.
Is Kirkwood a charter city? Okay. Wildwood is a charter city.
Webster Groves.
St. Charles, City of St. Charles is a charter city.
Right.
So they will have broader powers, right? Because they aren't necessarily limited by the statutes that are adopted to govern what a city can and cannot do. They're governed by provisions in the Constitution. So since we're a third-class city, we can only levy and collect license taxes on particularly specified businesses under Section 94-110 of the Missouri statutes. And so Section 94-110, it actually lists out, I believe it's 212 different licenses, businesses that we have the authority to, as a third-class city, have the authority to license and charge a fee for that license. And if a business or occupation isn't found under that statute, then the city doesn't have the authority to regulate it. For example, and I was doing a little bit of research earlier today on this issue actually, electricians, right? There's an Attorney General opinion from the 1980s where the Missouri Attorney General was asked to weigh in on whether a third-class city could require an electrician operating in their jurisdiction to obtain a business license. And the answer is no. And in that particular instance, I believe the city was also requiring electricians to actually pass a competency test, which I think, again, the AG said, no, you can't do this. So we are limited to, we are limited in what we can and can't do by the statutes. I hope that was helpful.
Well, I think, and I don't want to speak for you, Yolanda, tell me if I'm wrong. What tool do we have to control what type of business we want? For example, we don't have used car lots on Natural Bridge. How did we accomplish that?
So that is probably a zoning issue, not a business license.
Definitely a zoning issue.
Okay.
That's what I said at the beginning. The license is just collecting a tax and you can revoke the license, but in terms of what goes in on a certain parcel is a zoning issue. And if you
Well,
will
it's
send me
not, that's not
application-
my only question or concern. The question, the second, you answered the first part. The second question that I had was when it comes to businesses that do not have proper business licenses because previously they have been given a license for whatever, shaking somebody's hand or handout or whatever, what do we as a community, what do we as a city, what can we do to say, no, you have to leave?
If there's a specific.
Well, in there, so
Yeah, go ahead.
there is so if they haven't paid, we could revoke the license and then they could apply for renewal and pay, as long as they pay the fees and the late fees, then unless we go through a proper revocation process, we have to issue them the license.
So, the business that
There is a
you
certain
told,
process.
the business that you told us about, you said that there were certain businesses that didn't have licenses, and the businesses that didn't have licenses were allowed to stay. But what I'm saying is, what can we do to make sure that that does not happen? Because somebody could come in and see an abandoned building and I'm going to set up shop almost, and like, I'm going to have a business here. And then it's like, no, you can't do that. Well, you know what? The business is already here, it's zoned for it. And then I went and talked to Joe Schmo up at City Hall and he gave me a business license. See, and all I have to do is keep paying this $50 and I can do whatever I want. Like, how did we get away from that?
Well, we don't do that. I mean, in this.
But it has happened.
In this specific instance, they had a claim that the previous administration did issue them a business license. But in a very short time period, they went ahead and paid all the license fee taxes and late fees. And they're compliant with the zoning. And then also the business license isn't technically the tool. If you don't think that type of business should be there, that's a zoning violation. And if someone's guilty of a zoning violation, that's a fee for each day that they're violating.
So then, if the building that they're occupying was set to be apartments and it's a business, isn't that a zoning violation?
That would be a zoning violation, yes.
So the balloon business here is in apartments above the businesses down
It
there.
is zoned commercial.
Huh?
It's zoned commercial.
The upstairs is zoned commercial?
The whole property is zoned commercial. If there are apartments up there, that would be the zoning violation.
No, well, there were apartments in the past, so the zoning was
I've heard
changed.
stories like that.
So the zoning has changed?
No,
for
the
them?
zoning has not changed.
So they're still zoned for apartments, not
No,
business?
they've never been zoned for apartments. They've always
They've never
been
been
zoned
zoned for apartments.
for commercial since 1969.
Well, this is kind of information that, so this comes up and it's not conveyed to the council. So we have these questions because we drive by them every day and we bring up the question, but the information, this is the most information I've received about that situation.
Now,
I'm just
and I
saying.
apologize. I thought that when both Councilwoman Campbell and both Councilwoman Rosso came in and we had that discussion, that we went into detail about how this works, but I apologize if I didn't. I mean, if it's a zoning violation, and it's possible that there could be zoning violations that we don't know about in the city of Normandy. If something's covert, then we may not know about it, but if it's a zoning violation, then it does need to be addressed.
I think that this is what I'm saying. It is not okay. And maybe I am just too like, this is just how we need to do business in the city of Normandy. To me, it is not okay for a business to come in and shake hands with somebody else, with somebody in City Hall and get a business license and not go through the proper channels. And then when we find out that they have not gone through the proper channels, we continue on this path because it is, I don't know, the path of least resistance. I'm not really sure. What I'm saying is, if we're not going to hold these businesses accountable for doing things underhandedly, then why do we have a mission and a vision for Normandy? That's what I'm saying. So if I find out that somebody has been exercising some type of thing in Normandy for like 10 years because they came into City Hall and they shook somebody's hand, that's not okay with me. So then how do we rectify that? So going forward, how do we say, you know what? We're not going to let this happen. So is that an ordinance thing where we say, if we find out that a business got a license illegally, your license is immediately revoked? Because this is the thing, even the businesses that you talked about, they have not come forward and set foot in front of the council to say, this is how I got the business license. I haven't seen one citation. I haven't seen one person come forward. So I'm just trying to figure out, how do we make sure that we're crossing our T's and dotting our I's and making sure that we are a legitimate city?
So I'm
Well,
curious.
hold on, one thing, in this specific case, when we became aware of the violation, and they were up at City Hall the next day applying for a business license application. Once they put the application in and they've provided all the required materials, then they have a business license.
And I think that that's wrong. That's what I'm saying. I think it's wrong for you to be able to like go for 5 or 6 years. And then one day you just come in and you know what? I had a change of heart and now I'm going to do everything that's right. And you get to do it in one day. You get to do it in one day when everyone else has been following the rules the entire time.
Yolanda, in my experience of the conversations that we've had, I don't think we've met together and talked with you, but it's been piecemeal. That when I brought it up and Yolanda brought it up separately, because I just was going by there wondering, well, in learning how to be a council person, you know, I've never seen this person previously come up to the council, because that was the previous way businesses were brought into the city. And it was like, well, it's being it's being worked on. This was over months of it's being worked on. There was not a clarity of information given to us. We brought it up perhaps maybe one more other time. But so now I'm hearing all this clarity, and it's like it's not been like the next day. Because I'm remembering the conversations where we're working it out. Rick is addressing it, you know, that kind of thing. And I think that's what Yolanda is saying, is that skirting of applying of the ordinance, or, you know, the expectation of having a business license.
So Yolanda, are you saying there should be some more punitive action?
Yes. I'm saying that it's not okay for you to come in and set up shop in Normandy for 5 or 6 years. And then one day, just because you got caught, and let's be clear, that's what I'm saying, because you got caught.
Yeah.
Because if you hadn't got caught, you wouldn't have voluntarily came up there and said anything to anybody, but you got caught, okay, because there was some activity. Now you want to try to come in and rectify. No, that's not how it works.
Well, it's essentially a taxing issue with license taxes, and if you fall
But what
behind.
I'm saying is, when in this situation, how do we stop this from going? How do we stop this from happening again in the future?
Well, we don't let people set up shop in Normandy without getting business licenses. I can't prevent the administration from 3 years ago not requiring them to come in to get a business.
But we can't make an ordinance that says if you did not get a business license properly in this city, it is immediately revoked, and you need to do these things to get a path to having a license. That is nothing that we can do with our ordinance.
No, it's not. Now, you could have a zoning regulation about specific shops, but no, and I'll defer to the city attorney, but that's not my understanding of how business licenses work.
Okay, then what would work in that situation?
So what punitive action could be put in place?
So the punitive action in this case was the late fee. They paid their back taxes with a late fee.
Okay.
And that's it.
Right, we can't go back in time and shut them down, and once they're paid up, they're not in violation of anything, so we can't, you know.
So this is what I hear you saying, and I don't want to put words, I'm just gonna tell you what I hear. I hear that if I want to be a business owner, I really can just go to the owner of the business, right, and say, I want to put a business right here, and he says, okay. And then I put a business in there, and I find somebody on city council, or maybe I don't, I just have the business. And then one day you guys maybe find out that I'm like, or I have this business and it's illegal, but then I'm like, oh, you know what, my bad. You know what can I do to rectify this? And then I just have to pay like, I don't know, $200 or something like that. And it's okay, you keep your business, it's fine.
So Andy, is there something more punitive that could be put in place for that type of action that she's described?
So, right, so in the event where, again, in the past where somebody is operating without a business license, I mean, they can be cited for operating without a business license. There can be, I have to look at, occupancy permit code to see if there's a way to revoke an occupancy code, or occupancy permit. I don't necessarily want to speak to that. I would be comfortable saying that, you can cite that person in municipal court for operating a business without a code. But again, as Sam said, once they come and they say, okay, well, I'm gonna pay my fees, under the code, section 605.120 is what I'm looking at, there is a schedule which assesses, late fees, and I'm not sure if
So do we have to take the money?
I'm not sure if that they meet all the other requirements that the city can say, no, we're not going to give you a license.
So if they come in
I'm
and say,
starting to dive a little bit into the case law right now to try to see if you would answer your question tonight, but,
but if somebody comes in and says, I want to pay the late fees, do we have to take the money?
and that's what I'm trying to do the research on. The way I'm looking at the way the code is drafted, I don't see discretion to say, well, no, you've operated, you've been a bad actor in the city before, and now we don't want to allow you to operate.
We set up, our ordinances are a set of rules for businesses. We have our zoning code, which is the main, if you want to control who comes into the city, that's where the zoning code comes in. We set up all these rules. If someone comes into the city and they comply with every rule, then they get to have a business in the city of Normandy. And
I don't think we're speaking the same. I am not saying people that follow the rules. I'm saying people who do not follow the rules. I understand that if you're known for that and you're following the rules, I get it. What I am saying is for people who operate under the radar, what do we do with these bad apples?
right, I mean, okay, two parts. Once they come in and they pay the fee and they pay the late fees, they're now following the rules.
Do we have to take the money? That's what Andy's gonna get to, right? Because
Yes.
just because you give me a check doesn't mean I have to take it to my bank account.
But if we don't take the money, we're essentially saying we're not going to issue a business license, and on what grounds? Because there's really no choice in the matter. The zoning's consistent.
So we can't say, we're not gonna issue you a business license because you have been illegally operating a business in this place, and it is not our understanding that we recognize you as a business, but we gotta take your money. You can now have it.
Based on what criteria then? Because then that's discriminatory. What criteria would we have as a municipal government to enforce not taking their money and not renewing or not continuing to give them their business license?
Okay, maybe I'm just the only one that doesn't think that somebody can just set up shop and then continuing to set up shop and not going through the proper channels is a bad thing. Maybe
It's definitely a bad thing. It's just, I don't know how, with what very limited
the
ability.
particular business that I am talking about, and maybe this is something that we need, I
Is
don't
this
know.
a legal question?
I don't know if this is something that we need to talk about in closed session, but the business that I'm talking about is where the balloon business is and all of that, right? So there's a business in there that was operating for years under Mayor Green without a business license. And that business was allowed to operate until until Rick found out that they didn't have the proper licensing. And you know what they did? They came in and they paid their money and everything. The owner of the building knew that it was an illegal business. There was activity there. There was shootings and everything like that. And they still got to stay in their spot. They never came before us. They never got fined. They never got anything revoked. It was just, we're working with them. And I think that that's wrong. That's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about a business that comes in and says, I'm filling out this application. You are zoned for this area. I am going to pay my money. And we've seen these businesses. They stand in front of the council. I want to have this type of business here. We vote. Okay, you can have it. I'm not talking about those places. I'm talking about businesses that operate illegally.
I'll just say this. So there's really no decision when it comes to issuing a license. If they have X, Y, and Z, the license is issued. Payment, zoning, and occupancy. If they have those three things, they get a license. There is a process for revoking a business license. It requires good cause. And there's, defer to Andy on what good cause is. Now that is a decision, and that is a council decision. But as far as from an administrative perspective, if there's payment, zoning, and occupancy, the business license is getting issued, and there's no decision in that. It has nothing to do with the council, and it's just going to happen that way.
Steve?
I could probably throw something in. About 12 years ago, there was an illegal car repair business. It was actually in Ward 2, it may be in Ward 1. Bottom line was this: you couldn't see his shop by his street. He had 8 or 10 days, and he was operating for years, right? He had a sour customer come in that happened to come down to City Hall and complain about that business. They did their due diligence, didn't have a business license, it's residential.
But see,
Right.
that's the thing,
So
residential.
what I'm getting at is because of the zoning, they were able just to delete it right there.
Shut them down.
Boom, lock the doors, you're done. Get the cars out, lock the doors, you're done. On the zoning,
Yes.
and then the feds got them for not paying taxes.
Well, so yeah, if it's a zoning violation, we can show up every day and write them a ticket for up to whatever the ordinance
Right.
provides.
So you explained that they came in, they paid their fees, they paid their back taxes with a penalty, and there's a schedule of what that penalty is. Is that schedule dictated by Missouri law, or is that
But
something?
our late fee is, I think 5% for every month off the base. It's capped at 25%, so they paid a 25% late fee, and they paid their back taxes as well. So they paid their back with late fee, and they did that for the 3 years that they should have had a business license.
Right. And
Now-
is that late fee dictated by our ordinance, or is it
It is
dictated by
dictated
state?
by our ordinance, and
Okay.
then there might be some limitations in the state law about what that late fee can be, but currently our ordinance says 5% per month,
So
up to
can,
25.
so can you clear one thing up? Did they ever have a license? Or they never did come back and get it renewed?
They have a license now, they paid their,
But from day one, they never had it.
no. And if we, now we have the staff who are properly qualified and I think paying attention to this stuff. If we see a business and we say, hey, I don't think that has a business license, we check it out. And it shouldn't go 3 years without that happening.
True.
And it wouldn't go 3 years without that happening.
Well, in addition to, I don't think we're gonna be looking at this problem as some kind of consistent problem ongoing. But to Yolanda's point, if the council chose to write a more strict or more punitive schedule of penalty, we could do that.
Okay.
That's it. The only thing I'm saying is I feel like we're responsible council members and we do our due diligence. That does not mean that one day an irresponsible council member will not be sitting in one of these seats. That's what I'm saying. So it is nice to think that everybody that gets elected is 100%, doing their due diligence, but we know that that does not happen. So since we know that it has happened in the past, we need to do something to CYA is what I'm saying.
Well, then I will say this, at some point in time, the Normandy City Council gathered and they had this conversation once already and they determined a penalty for not complying with the business license ordinance. And they determined the penalty was 5%, not to exceed 25%. That, it's already been addressed. If we want to readdress that, we can do so, but it has been addressed. And I will say in this particular issue, it sounds like that ordinance was followed to the T. They were forced to comply within the limitations of the what punitive action we could take against them. So I mean, we could readdress that.
I would like to see something that says if you are operating in that capacity, then you are immediately shut down. That's just me. I would like to see you shut down. And you need to follow the proper protocols. You need to pay everything back, and you need to also follow the proper protocols, because I think you should have a period where you cannot be allowed to operate. like you have been doing this illegally, you should not be allowed to operate because you don't have a license.
And I'm saying, yeah, I think we would probably have the authority to address again that back taxes and penalty schedule that was created, and Andy's gonna address if there could be more punitive action.
I will review that. I can't make a statement on that tonight.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get an answer to that.
Can I add one thing, since we're on the zones and codes?
Yeah.
You know, the gas station, they have slot machines in there.
Okay.
Yeah,
I really,
They don't qualify by law as gaming machines.
they can?
They don't, they can have them.
They
We
can
already
have
looked
them?
into that, we tried to get them out.
Okay, you already did,
The
okay.
police department tried to get those out.
Okay, because I had a resident ask about that, so since
They
we're
told
on
us
the
they don't
subject.
constitute gaming machines.
Okay,
I've got an example, like, we mentioned about the car dealership not being invited.
Right, right.
So what if another business comes that's, and it doesn't follow our vision and mission, such as the car dealership? How can we protect our city from something that's shady and not, you know, and then just give them a go-ahead? You see the townships, municipalities have conflict with sex shops and things like that. How do you protect our city from just giving out business license just because they've addressed?
So, yeah, and absolutely, that's a great question. So we have a section in our code about special use permits, and I believe car dealerships is on that list. So you cannot open a car dealership in the city of Normandy without a special use permit. And we just went through that process with USDA, because you also can't open up, 20,000 square foot lab testing facilities without a special use permit. So, yeah, if there's an unsavory business or type of business that does not fit our mission and values, we write an ordinance saying that in this zoning district, this use is not allowed unless by special use permit. And then that has to go through planning and zoning, has to have a public hearing that is noticed to all surrounding properties, and then the council votes on it. So right. And that would be a case if they came in with a business license, I would say, nope, sorry, you need a special use permit. And then that's when the council and a special use permit gets a lot of people involved. It's when everyone else would get involved. And then only after that all plays out would a business license be issued. But if the code says a car dealership can be placed in this type of zoning district, it's gonna get placed there. Car dealerships, I believe, are a special use permit. So, yeah.
And I think a good place to start is make yourself real familiar with our existing zoning. And if there's something in there that you say, I don't like this, or I want to change this, or I want to add this as a special use permit or restricted use altogether, then we can address that. But yeah.
So as far as like with one of the particular things, like with the bar and grill, right? One of the parts of obtaining a business license says
at all.
Andy's asking that we not address that.
okay.
I mean, honestly, I don't like that we've been discussing individual identifiable businesses at all.
Okay, not that place, but for a bar, just for a bar. One of the things that you have to do is you have to get signatures, and it can't be within so many feet of a church and everything like that. So like, what would we do if part of you getting the business license is to follow these steps, but then the business gets it anyway? Like, is there a way for you to, I mean, clearly we can't revoke it, but like, could there be a penalty associated with it? Or is that our problem? Like, you didn't do it.
I want Andy, but that sounds like our problem. If we don't follow our own process and issue a license, that sounds like our problem.
Yeah, I don't see how the city could impose, I want to choose my words carefully here.
Because
given the nature of some ongoing litigation with the city, I don't want to answer this question in
Yeah.
open session.
under
We've
special
got
use?
ongoing litigation that's very closely related to this. Let's save this for a closed session conversation.
Yeah.
So, any other questions on this process of?
My only question for business licensing specifically is, as you were bringing up, Sam, at the beginning of this, how do we incentivize and attract businesses that are high needs? Let's say, for instance, a good, healthy, reputable coffee shop, or a bakery, or a bistro, a restaurant, what have you, anything of that nature. How can our business license or our zoning be made updated even so as to attract much needed and wanted businesses?
Kiana actually had a really interesting idea the other day, and this is all credit to her. If it's a certain type of business that we really want to get in, maybe we waive the fees. I don't know about the legality of that. That's something that we need to look in.
Okay.
It's a fairly marginal incentive, I will admit. But yeah, if we're looking for X type of business, like a coffee shop, we'll have to look into it. But yeah, maybe we could waive the fees for X amount of years to just get that extra boost.
Thank you.
But also, I mean, you know, tax abatement is another tool,
yeah.
and that has to do with a redevelopment corporation. But I'll tell you, if you want to get, businesses who want to do business, if you want people to come in and do business inside the city of Normandy, one, you have to have a set of consistent rules that make sense. And that's what we're doing right now. We're going to address our ordinances. We're going to get all of our laws into line, and it's going to make sense, and it's going to be clear, and then we can enforce that fairly and consistently, and people will see that, and they'll want to do business. What scares people away is when they come in and they say, I want to do this here, and it's just not done in a professional manner, or it's convoluted, or it requires too much red tape. Special use permits require red tape, so that there's a balance there. But I think that getting a consistent set of rules and fairly enforcing them will go a long way to attracting business.
I just do want to add to that, a lot of the problems that we've had, we're just not going to have. And kudos to the crew we got over here. We're in good hands now, and they're doing a good job. And we're just not going to face the problems that we faced in the past. I'm real confident of that. Now, there are issues with zoning that have to be addressed. And again, make yourself familiar with our existing zoning rules. And if there's a problem, we have to identify the problem, as Yolanda did, before we can come up with a solution. We need to identify specifically what is it you want to see changed in those existing zoning rules. So I'll leave it at that.
The other thought I had is, just like you put out on the website for contractors to make bids, could we do something like for businesses and say, we're looking for a restaurant in Normandy?
Yeah.
Some descriptors, and no, I'm serious.
Yeah. Affirmative recruiting program.
We've got some areas open to be rented or bought for I don't know,
More investigation is needed.
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, I think part of that, there's a few different things. One, our website could definitely use some updating, and that's going to be an ongoing project.
Well, it's already happened, thank you. It's
Well,
becoming.
we still got some information we need to update on. I do like the new website, though. It looks very nice, and there's a bit of a learning curve, I won't lie.
Yeah, workshop on navigating the website would be great.
So hopefully we can simplify that.
Yeah.
Sam,
again, the ordinance that you're bringing forward is updating the application process.
The business license, the fees,
On the fees, we had a discussion. Right now, we do a portion of their gross revenues, which
Right.
I'm confident that we don't get good numbers given to us
No.
on those applications.
they do a notarized sworn affidavit. And if we,
Now,
and other cities have these ordinances that we can go in and inspect their books, and if we find it, then there's all these penalties, but, right, at the end of the day, I mean, they can lie to you, and as long as they get a notary, well, I mean, notary just.
So what do you do
verify
about
they
this?
sign.
Well, there's another possibility. We could charge business license based on the square footage of the building that they occupy. And I will tell you, that's how Maryland Heights does it. That's a change that we could make. And it would be so much easier to enforce because you can go to the county website, look at the square footage of the building, and there's no questions. We're all looking at the same information. So I would tend to lean that direction.
Deanna, what do you think? I'm seeing some thinking going on in your mind.
In my experience, I've seen the gross receipts accepted as such. I know Maryland Heights operates that way, but they also have larger businesses. So, you know, their commercial sector is different than the city of Normandy. I could foresee that being a potential issue with inviting new businesses coming to the city of Normandy. I am neither in favor of either. However, the city council would like to go in that direction, you know.
I mean, my personal opinion is, we really only have a few different retail businesses, and most of them are chains. Like we have 2 fast food restaurants and O'Reilly's. I don't think they're gonna lie. And then part of the ordinance change for smaller businesses, and that's gonna be changed to a flat fee. So, yeah, a retail business, could they lie to you? Yes. Is the enforcement, worth the money? Probably not. You probably spend more money and time trying to prove someone lied to you than you would from the fees. Because at the end of the day, we're talking a very small portion of our revenues, so.
Could we use their tax records as to their income?
That's what.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah, they're supposed to submit with their affidavit, but they can.
change that too.
And like Sam is also saying, is that one of the proposed focuses of the change to the business license ordinance is also a focus on service-based industry. So, and things that don't really quite fall within the gross receipt sales, or non-retail facing businesses. Understanding that our ordinance doesn't quite fit that need, so, for those businesses, as they come in, being prepared to operate and to issue licenses to them.
Anybody else? We'll just wait to see what you come up with and send out for the next meeting. We'll have our first reading, and this'll, I'm sure, initiate another conversation.
Yeah.
Thank you for your hard work, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do I have a meeting to adjourn?
I'll make a motion.
Second? All in favor? Opposed? Meeting adjourned.
And the first, November 1st, next meeting, right?
Yes.
And no meeting after.